Hey, hope you're doing well. Andy here from Drive Steady, and in this video I'm reviewing the 991.1 Porsche 911 GTS. So listen up, manufacturers are all moving to forced induction, mainly in the turbo flavor to increase efficiency and better daily drivability. And Porsche certainly isn't exempt from that, as the only cars that remain naturally aspirated is the GT trim level. So gone are the days of natural aspiration in the regular 911 Carrera. But do you want to know why this one is a little bit more special? I'm going to tell you in this review of the 991.1 Porsche 911 GTS.
I came from the mud, there's dirt on my hands. Strong like a tree, there's roots where I stand. Oh, I've been running from the law. Walking on some dinosaur. Facing on a sleepless night. Try to catch me howling at the moon.
Alright, so let's start the review off by thanking Porsche of downtown LA for allowing me to review this 991.1 GTS today. If you're interested in Porsche cars, they're the third largest dealership in the nation. I'm pretty sure they've got what you're looking for. Now, let's move on to this 911 GTS. And if you're not familiar with the GTS trim level, it slots in between the GT and the normal Carrera S. And what it generally means is a little bit more power, a little spicier on the outside, and some sportier stuff on the interior. But in this 991.1 generation, the GTS lettering meant a little more when you think about it in retrospect. And that brings me to my first point of why this car is special. It's because it came with a wide body, something that prior to the 992 generation was only kept for the all-wheel drive and the GT cars. But that all changed when the 991.1 GTS came out. You could get a wide body 911 with rear-wheel drive that didn't have a GT3 badge on it. That was actually pretty monumental, and throw on some center-locking wheels and the Aero Kit front bumper, and you've got a really sweet and compelling package in the 911 lineup. But beyond the fact that this came in a rear-wheel drive wide-body configuration, the thing that really moves the needle as far as this being unique and special is by far the engine. And it is a 3.8 liter naturally aspirated boxer 6-cylinder, making 430 horsepower and 325 pounds-feet of torque. This specific example is mated to a 7-speed PDK, and it puts power down to the rear wheels. Now, as far as weight goes, this thing weighs roughly 3,200 pounds, and all of this translates to a 0 to 60 time of 3.8 seconds. All right, now that the general stats are out of the way, let me tell you why this thing is so special as far as its engine and overall configuration layout. So, rear-wheel drive, all-wheel drive, 7-speed PDK, 7-speed manual. Mix and match however you like in the 991.1 GTS, something that wasn't always available in the 911 lineup. Next, 430 horsepower. That is a 30 horsepower increase compared to the Carrera S, and it equates to 113 horsepower per liter. Now, this isn't really talked about much because naturally aspirated engines are going away, but anything over 100 horsepower per liter was significant. So this having 113 per liter is absolutely astonishing. Now, how did it get that? Natural aspiration, so naturally aspirated engine. That in and of itself is the most special thing about this car, is that this is the last naturally aspirated non-GT regular Carrera 911. So not only is it the last one, but it's the most powerful Carrera naturally aspirated engine at 430 horsepower. Once it went from 991.1 to 991.2, it gained the twin turbocharged 3-liter engine, and gone were the days of natural aspiration in the regular 911 Carrera. So this is an extremely significant point now that these naturally aspirated engines are basically gone, not only from the 911s, but for all manufacturers. Now, one last thing that made this thing special and very compelling even when it first came out. Remember in 2015 when the GT3 came out and it only came in the PDK? Well, this GTS was available in a manual. So people saw this GTS and they said, wait a minute, rear-wheel drive, wide body, manual transmission, naturally aspirated, bumped down about 40 horsepower compared to the GT3. Special car. Even at the time, it was a very unique and compelling package. And when you look at it today, last naturally aspirated regular 911 Carrera, rear-wheel drive, manual transmission, still lightweight. But beyond all of this, it also had a valve-controlled sports exhaust system. So let me take you around back so you can listen to what it sounds like. All right, so even though I've been talking about naturally aspirated engines, manual transmissions, wide body, lightweight, all these wonderful things about this GTS, it is, after all, a GTS, and those trim levels come standard with things that would be optional in the regular Carrera and Carrera S. For example, PASM adaptive shocks with a 10mm lowered suspension, standard on the GTS. In addition to that, this car does have the Porsche Torque Vectoring or Porsche Torque Vectoring Plus. And in addition to that, because this is a PDK car, it had an electronic locking rear differential compared to a mechanical locking differential that you would have gotten in the 7-speed manual. Now, beyond that, 20-inch wheels that are basically the same ones you would get in the 911 Turbo S from the same time. They're 20 inches by 9 up front and 20 by 11.5 in the rear. So call it what you want as far as center locking wheels and maybe some of the difficulties of maintenance and taking them off and putting them back on. They just look really cool. Inside the wheel barrel, 13.3-inch brakes up front with 6-piston calipers. In the rear, 13 inches with 4-piston calipers. As far as tires, 245s up front, 305s in the rear. So not only are you getting the naturally aspirated engine, Porsche is definitely not skimping out on any of the suspension, wheels, tire, and brake components on the GTS trim level. So now let me jump onto the inside. Let me give you a quick overview of the interior. Of course, this is a prior generation car, so there are going to be some differences. So let's look at that, and then we'll move to the driving portion of the review. All right, so now the interior portion of the 991.1 GTS, and there's some things that you definitely see carried on into the 992. As always, Porsche likes to evolve the design both on the exterior and the interior, and certain things are just carried from one generation to the next. But then there are certain things in here that are just dead giveaways that this is a prior generation car. So let me get into some of the details on what makes this the GTS. This had more Alcantara, so on the door panels, on the lower part of the dash, all over the roof, and on the pillars here, and of course on the steering wheel and the shifter. Now, I'm not a really big fan of it being on the high touch points because your natural hand oils seep into them and they kind of look beat up. Like when I look at this steering wheel and the shifter, the Alcantara looks more beat up than it does on the door panel or on the roof, for example, places that you don't really touch as often. But the other item that I mentioned earlier on is the dead giveaway that this is a prior generation car, and it's always the technology, it's always the infotainment system. And some of the things that are giveaways here are that there's a lot of buttons It's a very button-centric infotainment system, and I saw this in the GTS 4.0 that I drove that has a newer generation infotainment than this, but still prior generation compared to what's in the new 911s and new Porsche cars, which is basically all touch-centric. All the functionality that you see that have buttons here are all basically built into the screen in the new 911. But that's not a bad thing, because the analog functionality of this car are good period-centric characteristics. When you look at it and you tie it into the nature of the naturally aspirated engine, those things are all going away. So why not have these buttons that are also all going away? So it's this really nostalgic character that you're going to get even from the interior and this button layout. Now, one other thing that you're going to get in this that you're not going to get in the new cars is the cup holder design. So this is the infamous 911 cup holder design that gets tucked away really nicely here in the dashboard. And then just beyond that, two last things. This car does have the 18-way seats, which I experienced for the first time in the Cayenne Turbo S Hybrid Coupe that I drove, and I'm experiencing here again in the 18-way seat. It is a lot more comfortable than what I've sat in other 911 cars or other Porsche cars that I've sat in. The 14-way seat, the sports seat, and the 18-way seat is definitely the most comfortable and obviously has the most levels of adjustment. But one thing, when I sat in the Cayenne Coupe's 18-way seat and I'm sitting in this one, I feel like that one, the newer one, is a little bit more comfortable, but that's just seat of the pants feel I'm getting as I'm sitting in this car right now. But overall, as far as the interior goes, still top-notch quality, still nice fit and finish. The materials, everything else looks good. This is a 6-year-old car with 20,000 miles on it, and it looks practically brand new. There isn't anything in here that looks completely beat up or shot or anything like that. So that's the level of Porsche quality that you're going to get in this even prior generation 991.1 GTS. So that's pretty much it on the interior. Now let's go to the driving portion of the review and see what this naturally aspirated goodness is all about. Alright, so now the driving portion of the review for the 991 GTS. And as always, this is what the key looks like. It looks like a 911, so that's always cool. But it is plastic on the sides. I do like it when they paint the exterior color on the key, and that's always a nice touch. But this is a gray car, so it wouldn't really make that much of a difference. Now, as far as the price goes, the 991 GTS was $115,000 when it was brand new. And because they're so desirable now, especially with the manual transmission, most of them are basically going for what they were when they were new as used cars. So that's just the specialness of the car, and also obviously a bigger part of that is COVID. Anyways, now as far as visibility goes, out the front is fantastic. In Porsche cars, you've got the fishbowl type experience, or in Porsche 911 cars, you do have the fishbowl visibility out back, out the sides. Absolutely no issues with visibility when you're driving a 911 of basically every single generation. So now with that, let's go ahead and turn this thing on and go for a quick spin. And the exhaust sound in this car and the engine noise is fantastic. And just wait a second, you'll see it, or you'll hear it here in just a second. So let's go ahead and put it in exhaust mode on, and you can hear it immediately have a deeper rumble. And let's go ahead and put it in Sport Plus mode, because it absolutely makes a difference when you're in Sport Plus mode compared to Sport or just the regular mode. It's actually a substantial difference, even in sound and also in acceleration as well. The throttle response gets much, much better. So now let's get rolling, and I'm going to put it in manual shift mode. And in Sport Plus mode, you could also hear the backfire or the pops in the exhaust. Not so much there, but give me a second, you'll hear it. So now let's we're on a straight stretch of road now. Let's hear that RPM. Oh yes. Ooh. Very, very quick. There's the downshift. Brakes are good. Oh, wow. the sound is remarkable. Ooh, there's the downshift, the wail of the 911 and the flat boxer engine is just, you don't get this sound anymore, and it's a shame in the twin turbo cars, the 3 liters. Nothing against them, but give me this all day. Seeing that needle drop down to almost 8,000 is just something different, and definitely something I prefer in a lot of my cars. All right, let's get another one here. Wow. And I really got to concentrate here because this thing feels faster than it is. Oh, look at the downshift. Okay, so, all right. I think it's been established that the high revving nature of this is absolutely worth the price of entry. Almost 8,000 RPM redline, and it sounds magnificent when you're on it at any RPM. It's just a fantastic sound. So now, what about the rest of this? Let me catch my breath for a second. Man, that's such an exhilarating experience when you've got a high revving car. So as far as the suspension goes and the overall comfort, it is a stiff riding car. When you're in the comfort mode, it does definitely give you the sports car 911 feel, which is to be expected. And when you put it in sport, not in sport plus mode, the suspension in sport, it makes it even firmer riding. Like I'm riding around in downtown LA streets and I could definitely feel everything coming through the suspension, and it's a very stiff and direct car. As far as that the steering feel, there's no deadness in this wheel. Whatever I tell it to do, it does it. It feels natural. It doesn't feel overly weighted. It is the Porsche electric steering box, which is always highly regarded. So no issues with steering. And I'm not going to pretend like I drove this in the mountains. I'm generally giving you the feel I'm getting as I drive it here in the streets. And then the brake pedal is very, very good as well. It's got a lot of bite right at the top of the pedal, which is what I prefer. And then the braking feel overall is as you would expect in a sports car. And then finally, the PDK. The PDK is very good, but when you drive the new 8-speed PDK in the 911 and you drive this, you can absolutely tell the difference between the two transmissions. The newer transmission is a lot crisper and a lot sharper and a lot more effortless in the shifting response, or I guess the shifting itself. As far as this on a daily basis, it is fairly comfortable. I can't say it is like a Cadillac or some type of Lexus, Mercedes type of feel. You definitely feel like you're driving a sports car, and if that's something you're not looking for, then you're not really gonna enjoy this 911 experience. And then beyond that, I'm just gonna go straight to the engine and the response that this car gives you. Even when you're driving it slow, the engine note is quite different than a forced induction car, and it's such a satisfying sound and feeling to drive this car. I'm gonna get a straight switch over again, and I just can't help myself. See, that was without the exhaust enabled and not in Sport Plus mode, and you can definitely tell the difference. But it's just such a satisfying experience, for me at least. It is absolutely my preference to have a high revving car versus a car with a lot of torque down low that just shoves you into your seat. I like the linear power band that gives me a nice smooth delivery of power and torque. Speaking of torque, A lot of people don't like these high revving engines or complain about these 911s, specifically these GTSs, because they don't have a lot of low-end torque, which is quite useful when you're driving in the city like this or on day-to-day driving. I personally found no issues with it. It feels just fine. Even I'm in 5th, 6th gear. This thing is shifting so fast, and I have plenty of down-low grunt to get me going. I don't have any issues with it whatsoever. So the only thing I would say that would be a downside, if you're not really expecting it, if you're expecting it to be a comfortable riding car, it's not. But otherwise, and one other thing, if you're expecting a cutting-edge infotainment system, you're also not going to get it in this. So if you're doing comparisons on what to buy, those are some of the shortcomings. But on its own merits, just without comparing anything else, this is such a fantastic car. I can't even imagine what a GT3 feels like to drive. As I'm stuck here in traffic, I think I'm just going to wrap it up. If you have any other questions, please make sure to leave me a comment down below or send me a message on Instagram @DriveSteady. Otherwise, thank you for watching this video. Until next time, drive steady.